So in this film we're looking at saving the image. It's something we're going to be doing every single time we touch Photoshop. So the first thing we want to do is understand the principles of the different files, and those different files are basically going to be a raw file, they're going to be a JPEG, which is a compression file, and then they're going to be something like a TIFF or a PSD file for either a multi-layered document or a multi-layer image. Let's just, first of all, this image I've opened directly from RAW, not done any work to it at all, but I need to actually save it before I do anything else. And the reason being is that I've opened it directly into Photoshop, as I'll show you now in a minute, but because I didn't save it on the way through, as far as I didn't save it as a JPEG or a TIFF or where it is, and then open it in Photoshop, it's come into Photoshop as the .cr2, that's a Canon RAW 2 file. So I need to save it first. So File, Save As, and then at this stage we need to choose where things are going to be saved. I'm just going to create a new folder for a minute, and I'm going to just do Natalie, and this would be Save Demo. Okay, but I always add JFR, which means JPEG from RAW, and as you can see above here, we've already got a folder showing the date and the client's name and then the JFR, so JPEG from RAW. So I'm going to double click into that, and at this stage we want to just save it as the same file name, and we're just going to press save. Now JPEG compression, I mentioned, as a rule I would recommend saving around about a 10 for general usage or above, and if it's just for website and so on and you're looking to make duplicate files lower resolution or for emailing things, then something around about a 7. So you can either go in here and type in a number, or you can use the slider bar, or you can actually kind of do the drop down. So low would be pretty much press, medium would be basically just for your phone or whatever it would be, and then basically a high resolution would be something that you really want to actually keep and not lose any detail or minimize it, and then of course we'd have the maximum, which would be kind of what we're trying to store things as the majority of the time. Now you'll want to actually save things in your own kind of way. I would recommend all the time that your JPEG is saved as between a 10 and a 12. I don't usually save it anywhere above 10. However, the 12 is maximum. But even if you save it as a maximum, a JPEG, Joint Photographic Education Group, yes, is basically a compression file. No matter what you save it as, it is losing that little bit of information in the pixel. So if I press save to this now, and I press OK, and then basically I can shut this image down and then it's done. So if I come back into my raw kind of place here, and I kind of click at the top of the bridge window, very similar in Lightroom, okay, and we can now see that we've got an Natalia Save Demo JFR, and if I double click into it, I can now kind of see that JPEG file that we just saw here. The first thing that I encourage you to do, remember, is that if you're shooting RAW, is to process through RAW and save a file output first before bringing them into Photoshop. And most of the time, in fact, I'm not using Photoshop except for fixing or kind of creative enhancement. Right, let's bring this into Photoshop. So I can either double click it or go up into File, Open with, Photoshop. And by doing that, it goes straight into Photoshop, and then pretty much we're done. Now, if I do anything to this image, crop it, retouch it, shape it, it doesn't really matter what I do to this image. While it's in a kind of a JPEG mode, I'm basically working in a lossy kind of way. Okay, so it doesn't matter what I'm doing, basically I'm screwing up the image is the simplest way to kind of put it, and I'm really not going to have anything to go back to as far as the kind of the specific file. Now remember, I've already saved the actual raw file, and as long as I keep that on my system, I can go back and re-edit files and so on. But whatever I'm doing in Photoshop here, if I'm going to resave this as a JPEG, then basically everything, that original JPEG that we just opened a minute ago, is gone. So in other words, if I just go File and I go Save, okay, and we close this down, Yep. You can see now that file that we just opened a minute ago is now the updated file, so we lost it. So if we were going to go through the kind of procedure like we just saw, let's bring that image in again. So we'll double click to go into RAW. Yes, we'll open it into Photoshop by clicking open on the bottom here. It already remembers the adjustments that I made before. I bring it into Photoshop, and now if I go File, Save As, or Save, yes, the first thing it's going to do is basically, obviously it keeps its file name, it's recognized as a JPEG, and it's going to go Save, and I'm going to press OK. And then if I shut this down, yep, we can see it's actually created a JPEG within the folder of the RAW. Okay, because we didn't tell it where to save to, yes? So if I open it up again once more, just so you get the hang of it, we open it through Photoshop, and then we go into File and we go to Save As. If we now kind of click backwards on the kind of the tab at the top, and we find that Natalie saved demo JFR, if I try and save it now, it's going to give me a warning come up because it's basically got the file name the same. So do you want to replace it? It's going to be either yes or no. If I press yes, it overwrites this one fully. If I press no, it basically is waiting for me to do something else, either cancel it or give it a new name. So at this point, I'm just going to do an underscore, and I'll just put an O for original. I'm just going to press save. Now it's basically saved it. So if I come back out of the file now and I step backwards into the JFR, you can see I've got both files there. So at this stage, because they are JPEG files, if I double click it, it opens directly in Photoshop. It doesn't need to go through the Canon RAW processor as such, yes? If I was to either right click it or come up to File and Open with Camera Raw, then it would actually go through the RAW process once more with it. And we'll cover that in future advanced kind of sessions anyway. So we're at the basics of the kind of the JPEG element. Let's stay with RAW just for 1 minute. And we want to work on this RAW file, so we'll double click it. That will open it in ACR again. Okay, and at this stage, after you've finished doing any adjustments that you want, basically at the top here, the right hand side, you can convert and save the image. So if I click on the down arrow, this is now going to actually say where would you like to actually convert this to. We could then basically go into the headshots Natalia. Then obviously we want to go into the Natalia, sorry, I've spelt it wrong anyway, save demo JFR, or I can create a new folder again, which would be Natalia original JPEG. Okay, so this could be JPEG from RAW. Okay, if it was a JPEG from camera, I would give the shortcut JFC, JPEG from camera. Yeah, that's my own kind of workings. So as this was though, it's not, and it's basically we'll just go into Natalia, and this is going to be original JPEG, and that is JPEG from RAW. Okay, so you might not need to have spelled that wrong again. Hey, it doesn't matter. Save in there, and then at this point, in exactly the same ways we just saw a minute ago, I've got the JPEG set as my format. I want to collect all the metadata as it exits, and I want to basically save it as a quality 10. Now, at this point, we can see that if we want to, we can also save this file as a digital negative. That's basically Adobe's own RAW file, a slightly smaller file than the Canon RAW file itself. The JPEG is the Joint Photographic Education Group that we talked about before. A TIFF file is a non-compressed but still a lossy file. So in other words, once we do some kind of funky things to an image in Photoshop, it's going to throw away the information, but it won't decrease the actual quality of the image any further in compression of file. It will be a large file. Photoshop, if we know we're going to work on an image in the likes of Photoshop and we're going to have multiple layers and so on, then basically we want to choose the Photoshop option. Or if we're going to have something that is going to be an invisible background, so it's going to be a cutout or whatever it is, we can start to save it as a PNG, which would be ideal for web. It's a smaller file size and obviously allow for a kind of missing background, which will show you on a further film. In this case, JPEG. Just going to press save. Remember, the same thing applies to the qualities. Low is 1 to 4, which is basically just low resolution. You don't really want to be using that at any stage. Medium of 5 to 7 is pretty much for your phone and kind of sending photographs just between one place and another as a proof. High would be for kind of quality, but not the best, and then maximum would be what we're recommending that you do is. So if I just press save. Now this won't open it up in Photoshop. As you can see, it just saved it. A blue line came down the bottom and that was basically done. If I click done on it now and we come back into the bridge and we go back into Natalia Save, now you can see that original JFR is here. That's the file we just saved from RAW to it. If we double click it, we know it's going to open straight away within Photoshop. Now, if I go to just close it down and I haven't done anything to the image, I can close it because I haven't done anything to it. Likewise with this photograph, I haven't done anything since I saved it, and I haven't done anything to this photograph since I saved it. So basically, if I do anything to an image, Photoshop will say, hey, what are you doing? Do you really want to kind of just leave this before we do anything else? So let's just say there's a bit of hair here that I noticed just actually when I was getting ready for the demo. So if I just went in, I basically did a kind of quick spot healing brush tool here. And this is a great kind of technique for beginners in retouching as such, really. All right. If I then basically needed to save this image, so if I just kind of hit the X, it's going to go, whoa, you've done something. Do you want to actually save the image? Now, if I just press yes, it's going to save over the top of the image. If I went save as, it would have allowed me to save it as a different file name. So I would add an extension of W on the end because I was working on it and things really. Right, so let's go and get that image. Now, because I oversaved the file, it's technically a lossy file now, so it's lost a little bit of the information. Just when the JPEG crushes, it basically throws some information. It looks at close pixels to each other, and then basically from there, it's kind of making a guesswork. When it reopens it up, it will kind of match similar kind of pixels together. The lower the resolution, the greater the pixel kind of spread. So in other words, let's say for the best quality, it looks at every pixel around itself, and it kind of analyzes all those 100 times, whereas in the lowest resolution it might look at 100 pixels around itself and just compress everything to an average of those and things really.